now for a generation that only benefit the richest people in the country, with the hope that if rich people do better, somehow everybody will do better. It doesn't work. When the middle class is strengthened, when we change our tax code to benefit people who work for a living, people in the middle of the economic spectrum, everybody does better, and even rich people do better.
Why we don't have enough economic growth in this country? Because the middle class doesn't have the disposable income that they used to have. They're feeling the pressures of health care, pension, just keeping their job. And all the Republicans talk about is more tax cuts for the wealthy. We can't raise taxes on the job creators? Really?
The net worth of American households dropped by $2 trillion.
We'll fire up the Occupy Wall Street crowd and their supporters. Our personal wealth has taken a major hit, while corporations see their stash of cash soar to record levels.
I think one of the problems of the country is that we've all been basically excused. Go grab your tax cuts.
Making sure that everybody is doing their fair share, and the middle class does not see their taxes go up by $1,000.
What the Occupy protesters were so angry about, and tonight there is more evidence they were right on the money. The gap between rich and poor is getting wider, the biggest it's been in 3 decades, and a new report found it is increasing just about everywhere, including Canada.
That great divide is highlighted in a new report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. In Canada, the richest 10% of the population made an average of $103,000. On the low end, the average income was $10,000. That's a 10-to-1 ratio, up from the 1990s when the difference was 8-to-1.
Income inequality.
There's a disparity between the rich and poor in the world, and even here in Canada, is so great. People have come fed up, and they realize finally that going through the legislation or electing a new politician is not going to make any difference because the whole system is corrupt.
Something like, it's funny, with the 99% and the 1% discussion, somebody pointed out that Congress has 12 of the richest Americans are members of the U.S. Congress. So like, if you wonder who those people care about, if they're the 1% in Congress, and the rest of the people in Congress are funded by the 1%, who are they going to make their laws for?
When the Republicans are asked why they don't raise taxes on the top 2%, they always come up with a line because it would harm the job creators. It would stop us from creating jobs. By the way, that argument makes no sense, because when George Bush cut taxes, the economy tanked, and we had the 4 or 5 worst years of job creation in the last 30. When Bill Clinton raised taxes on the top 2%, we produced 23.5 million jobs shortly thereafter.
I know many Republicans have sworn an oath never to raise taxes as long as they live. How could it be that the only time there's a catch is when it comes to raising taxes on middle-class families?
People that are tapped out, they've tapped out on their credit, they've tapped out all their sources of income, they've mortgaged themselves to the tits. And that was okay as long as they had a job, right? They could pay their bills down just to keep sort of treading water, and they could, it was extremely irresponsible of them. And if something like a recession happened, then they were fucked. But as long as the economy didn't, tank, then those people would have been able to tread water indefinitely. Maybe. But it didn't matter, because what happened was, the financial sector decided that they didn't like the amount of profits they were getting, and they wanted to increase their profits, they want to do. And they made really big risky gambles. And that's the only way to really increase your profit margins exponentially in a short amount of time, is to make really risky gambles. And they did. And it failed. And, it was a bit of a perfect storm. If you have lots of people that have lots of debt, and you have lots of people that are mortgaged to the tits, and you have lots of people that are just like one paycheck away from being homeless, and a bunch of people lose their jobs, all of a sudden you have people that can't pay their bills. Those people become completely screwed over. Those people are unable to purchase anything, even the basics of living, housing, all that stuff. And that's the cornerstone of capitalist economy. People.
So, let's just take a very specific example. All the families out there who have now lost their home after having paid their mortgage over and over again because they were told that they could afford this home. It was peddled deliberately to them, even though a mortgage broker might have known that there was no way that they could keep up with these payments. And now they're out on the street because nobody was making sure that there's fair play and fair dealing in the mortgage industry.
And then the people in the financial sector broke the agreement, in a way, but they broke the agreement for money, and they failed, and they got bailed out with tax dollars. It was amazing. All the money that could have been put out there to help the purchasing base get back on its feet was instead just given to bankers so that they could lend out more money and put people deeper in debt. So they've got a lot of reason to be angry down there.
They're not focusing on Wall Street. I was asked the other day by a student, what do you think about the Occupy people being kicked out of Zuccotti Park? And I said, well, it's kind of funny they're arresting demonstrators and pepper spraying students when not a single person has been charged with any sort of crime for what happened in 2008. And the risk
that you have a moneyed class that wants power, absolute, unquestionable, obedience, complete power. You know, and here it used to be that group had to bribe us off by having a big middle class, because the middle class are the people that vote to keep the status quo. The middle class are the people that vote to keep things the same, because they are like, oh, I fucking have a mortgage, I have 2 cars, I have some kids, I want them to go to college. I don't want things to be crazy because I've got all this stuff that I care about. You know, so that middle class used to be their bargaining chip. When there was the communists way over there, and it was like, well, everybody, we don't want people to like them, so we're gonna make a really big middle class, and we're gonna say capitalism provided the middle class, so that people love capitalism because they love being middle class. Now capitalism is eating the middle class, like a big fat pig, just like, you know, and people are getting really upset. So what are they? They take the money that they already have, they make more, and instead of being like, oh, you know, we're gonna invest it, we're gonna like participate in the community, they take all their extra money and they buy off governments. They create organizations, not-for-profit organizations, and like think tanks that do nothing but create more policy, more legislation that makes it easier for them to keep more of their money, so that they don't have to pay any taxes at all, so that and destroy unions and destroy, you know, public, like any sort of public systems that help people, because they don't want to pay taxes for that stuff.
I see people that I went to high school with, they went to university right after high school, and they went in and they went in for their bachelor's, and they came out right after the recession hit, or right as the recession hit, and they came out with the student debt, like $40,000 in debt or more, so they get their bachelor's, right, or master's, and then they can't get a job. There's no work. Yeah. There was this massive student debt, and they have to go move in with their parents and go get a McJob.
In the States, they are actually having their rights and their money and their government stolen from them, like full-on stolen from them, and they need to fight. They need to get out in the streets and fight, you know, and everybody in the States needs to do it. You know, they're being fucked over in so many ways that I couldn't possibly imagine being able to.
Republicans should be focused on what's good for the American people, but they are not. Once again, today's Senate Republicans voted against putting $1,500 in the pockets of 160 million Americans because of a tax on 345,000 millionaires.
You know, the values keep getting higher and higher and higher, but wages don't, you know? If the wage of the middle class stays stagnant, but the price of everything keeps going up, then it's, you know, it's twofold. You know, not only are people like staying poor or staying where they are, they're actually getting poorer, you know, because things always cost more.
It's got to be about the people. It can't always be about the profit.
Our politicians are sponsored and paid for by the corporations, and until we pass legislation that no corporations or persons can donate to any political organization or lobby, no lobbying either, we're going to still have the same problem of lobby groups and corporations controlling our politicians because they have the money to finance their campaigns and their candidates that represent them.
You know, so why would they ever create laws or policies that are good for us and bad for business when they're part of the business?
You know, I grew up here in Brooklyn, and we used to come home from school. My mother, some of the ladies in the neighborhood would make blueberry pie, and we would rush in knowing our mothers were still working, and we'd eat. They'd come in, did y'all eat the pie? No, and blueberry be all over our face. That's what happens when I look at the GOP. They talk about the economy's bad, and we didn't do it. We were the ones fighting, but they got the blueberry pie all over their face. They were the